Hey everyone! I know that I have a lot of stuff on my channel about the Rider-Waite-Smith system and deck, and it is a deck that I do enjoy and love, but I do enjoy and love other decks, and one of my favorite decks of all time is the Next World Tarot, which visually is about as far away from Pamela Coleman Smith as one gets. It's a contemporary deck. It's got people of color in it. It's got obviously queer people in it. It's an amazing deck. And I thought that I would maybe rave about it for a hot second because tomorrow a second edition or third edition, I guess technically third edition of this deck is going to be coming out. A pocket edition, so it's going to get shrunk a little bit, which is nice because this is really enormous. I actually didn't realize that Christy Rode was creating a tarot deck when I first discovered her. I actually found this deck through this card, the Lovers. Let me actually bring that up here. As you can see, that's a really amazing image. Just by itself, it's an amazing image. You've got a person who has probably been told their whole life by greater society that they just don't measure up, right? I know that queer people suffered an awful lot with body image issues and self-worth issues. I know that large people suffer with those issues. Disabled people suffer with those issues. Mentally disabled, that's not the word I'm looking for. People with mental illness can suffer with these issues. And here's a person who has all of them and is finding deep self-love. And like the look on her face, look at her face. The look on her face is just pure and total bliss, right? So I saw this image and like it just got me in my gut. And I knew that I had to learn about this artist. I knew that I had to learn about what they were about. And I was actually looking to see if I could get a copy of this in some capacity. And then I found the artist's website and found out very quickly that this was an image from a tarot deck and that this was the image of the lovers in that tarot deck. And I'm like, I need this in my life so hard. This deck is a new deck. It was published in 2018, just a couple of years ago. So it's not been out for forever and a day. But it's definitely changed the way I think about tarot in a big way. Partly is because of the amount of diversity in this deck, right? You've got, you know, a different body, a different color, a different gender expression, a different sexuality expression on pretty much every card. I don't think that this deck could be beaten for the diverse range of bodies it shows. You've got young people, old people, queer people, trans people, POCs, disabled people, gender non-conforming people. You got everybody. It's amazing. I should probably be like flipping this back on the camera rather than off camera, sorry. And more importantly, I think is this undercurrent of this idea of the next world. It takes place in a universe which I think is becoming increasingly like the universe we currently inhabit, where there's been some sort of apocalyptic event of sorts and humanity is rebuilding itself. And there's this beauty in this rebuilding. At least that's the way I choose to look at it. There's all sorts of like this devil card, like dissolve the empire undertaking, like there's clearly a whole bunch of really crap things in this world that's in the next world. But you also have moments of beauty. Like, yes, this is a person who's probably in a garbage dump, but they're able to wonder, look up at the sky and just have this moment of serenity and enjoyment. And it's really amazing. It's a lovely deck all over. The one thing that a lot of people do criticize the Next World for doing is the card size, which is really very large. Here is a Rider-Waite-Smith card by comparison. As you can see, like that's really quite large. which is why the Pocket Edition came out. This is almost unmanageable to deal with and shuffle. I have very large hands for a woman. I can span like an octave and 2 keys on a piano. You can now see how crooked my fingers are, great. But I struggle to span this and hold it. If I'm going to shuffle this deck, I actually like to riffle shuffle an awful lot. I have to riffle shuffle this deck on its side, which feels awkward to me. Let me see if I can't get this done. Like that. And that, I don't like that. It feels weird. So let me see if I can pull these apart now. Ah! So I've not ever been a huge fan of manipulating this deck. So what I did pretty early on was I trimmed a copy down. And when you just take the card down to the art, it dramatically reduces the size, as you can see here. And I didn't take off art, right? Look, that lines up perfectly. The only thing that is missing are the corners because I corner rounded it. So you can see a lot of this card is in fact border. If we bring our RWS card back into the play, we can now see that the art is height-wise, like what is that? Maybe a 1/4 of an inch taller than a standard card. Obviously wider, but the tallness is really the thing that gets me. So trimming it down was a great deal for me. So what I'm gonna do predominantly today is just kind of show you card by card what they look like full and trimmed. And then I guess whenever I get my Pocket Edition in a month or whenever Amazon can do that, I'll probably do another comparison of maybe both of these and the Pocket version. Before I get into that though, I wanted to mention a little bit about something that I've been appreciative of the Next World Tarot for, and that is these 2 cards, the Teacher and the Messenger. These are Christy Rhodes' revisions of the Emperor and the Hierophant. And for me, these cards have always been kind of negative, really. And partly that's because the deck I primarily use is the Robin Wood. And the Robin Wood images are pretty different. The Emperor, maybe not so much. The Emperor is actually, like, in Robin Wood, I feel kind of positive. It's got this, like, ooh, daddy vibe. But the Hierophant is quite negative in Robin Wood. Like, it's all about this institution and rigidness and rules and blind obedience, right? Now, none of that is really part of, I think, the Rider-Waite-Smith Hierophant. This is the CS Tarot, by the way. A lot of that stuff, I think, is a little less obvious in this card, but visually, the Robin Wood really nails that home. But the Emperor is also a card that a lot of people can react to negatively because it is a card of patriarchy. The Next World Tarot is a deck that questions patriarchy. And with both of these cards, the Emperor and the Hierophant, really accessing different aspects of patriarchy in a big way. I don't think that that was necessarily something that Christy Rhodes wanted in her deck. So she did change these to the Teacher and the Messenger. I struggled with that change for a real long time. To me, a teacher is a different thing than the Emperor, right? I am a teacher in my real life, and I don't consider the type of teacher I am to be this, to be all this fire, rules, stability, that type of thing. And I don't necessarily consider the Hierophant to be a messenger. Here, we don't really see the Hierophant talking, right? The Hierophant, their mouth is shut. We've got acolytes who are kind of like praying maybe, or, you know, doing something there, but it's not necessarily a message card. To me, there's an awful lot of maybe servility, maybe a lot of like blind faith, but I'm not necessarily like hearing an active like message or speech or argument, right? So I really did struggle when I encountered these cards and was kind of asked to think of the Emperor as a teacher and the Hierophant as a messenger. But when I started to kind of like give these two cards particularly a lot of attention and try to investigate those, it did actually change a little bit of how I responded to the traditional Emperor and Hierophant. I did start seeing a little bit more of these like positive qualities in these cards. The power of teaching in the Emperor, when before maybe I'd given a lot of that to the Hermit. But a Hermit is someone who's alone. They don't teach. It's self-lessons, self-teaching. It's not bringing that message to others. The Emperor has that maturity and has that leadership. The Hierophant with the messenger, kind of in this similar way. You go to church to get a message on how to live your life and how to interact with others. In the end, all a church, all that type of like organized religion really is putting forth a message and hoping that that message is a good one. So I really did appreciate how these cards have begun to help me change the way I view different meanings in a traditional deck. I think another good example of that from the Minor Arcana would be the Four of Pentacles, which is where? Here's the 8, 7, here we go. The Four of Pentacles. I kind of call this card in the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Miser card, because someone is like sitting there like holding on to their resources like very tightly. They're, you know, grabbing them all, etc. The Robin Wood in particular nails that home. Like, look at how mean and nasty that man is. And he's walled himself off from this really otherwise like quite happy world. Look at how nice and gay those banners are, right? A beautiful day. And he's just sitting there sallow and mean and alone. All right, so this is very often the image, because I predominantly read with Robin Wood actually. That's very often the image I have in my mind when I come across a Four of Pentacles. But that's a very different vibe from what's going on in a card like this, isn't it? Right? That person is not holding on to resources because they're hoarding or whatever. In fact, like, it looks to me very much like they're figuring out how to employ those resources to the best of their ability. Right? They're doing something on a mixing board, right? They're trying to like optimize what they've got to spread it out probably to other people. The key word even here is arsenal, right? An arsenal isn't a hoard, right? A hoard is just something you hold on to. An arsenal is a cache of weapons, and you use weapons to create change, right? So these slight little tweaks in the Next World Tarot and their messages have really helped me to see other aspects of cards, other aspects of things that I actually struggle with when I'm looking at this image, for instance, and reading what's in this image, right? So having that challenge has really, I think, helped me broaden out as a reader. So that's some things of why I like the Next World Tarot. At this point, I think what I'm going to do is zoom in a little bit and kind of do a little bit of a flip through between the full deck and the trimmed version that I've done, just because I think it does make the art look very different. All right, let's do that. Hey, it occurred to me as I was getting this set up that you might be interested to see the box that I made for my trimmed Next World Tarot. I did feel that once I got this deck trimmed down that it was just too small now for the actual box it came in. As you can see, like, that's like a good inch easy of vertical space that just gets hacked off. Not so bad left to right, but up and down, these were rattling around in the box an awful lot. So I did go ahead and make up a tuck box for it. That was super easy. All I did was just, you know, put this on craft cardstock, covered it with a pretty piece of paper, And then I did attempt to kind of like cover that with some cold laminate, which is maybe less successful than I wanted it to be, but it is a very sturdy tuck box for what it ended up being. So yeah, there was that. The cards themselves, I figured someone might end up asking about the trim that I did. It was, as you can see on these cards, it's very clean lines all the way around. So I did just follow the card lines, and it came out pretty darn even. And then I went to do like a final trim along a couple sides to make sure that all the cards were pretty uniform. At one point in time, I did kind of screw up something, and I took off too much of a card. This guy, the 5 of Pentacles. As you can see, like it ended up like maybe a 1/4 of an inch shorter than the rest. That bugs the heck out of me. Maybe at some point in time, I'll go ahead and trim down all the rest of the cards to that height. But probably not, because that's a lot of effort. So yeah. I do like borderless decks to have an edge. It kind of like hides an awful lot of like different, maybe like slightly off cuts or weird bleed or whatever, right? So I did go ahead and edge this in a nice pink, which I thought worked well with the back here. It is just straight up Sharpie, pink Sharpie. That's all that was, and it turned out, I thought, really well. The only other thing I did on this particular card is when I cut off the borders, I cut off the titles. And as much as I love this deck, I'm not off book with it yet. So I did go through and find a spot on all the cards to write the titles. Sometimes they're, you know, at a top center, bottom center, but I tried to find a spot on the card where it was the least obtrusive to the art and could still be read. Like here on the moon, I pretty much had to put it in the moon. So different things to that nature. So you will see like my addition of like writing the card title someplace on the card. So that is, I guess, all the details of the trim. What we're just going to do now is just, I'm going to shut up and we are going to just do a quick flip through so you can see like how each card really does change when you see it without the borders. I think the colors just really pop because these borders are just so white. Oh, I just noticed this. Okay, so if you look at these titles, that's Gloria and Zaldua's Borderlands, and what is that? Still and... I'll have to look at that. But those are actual books. Oops, sorry. I love this card trimmed. This one too. I love this card. For the longest time, it read to me more as the Magician than the King of Wands, but I'm totally getting it now. This card is so much like how my city is. Everything is for sale and boarded up and just sad. Wait. What? Ugh. How did that happen? One of the things I love most about this deck is that you don't have to have female appearing people on queens or male appearing people on knights or kings or whatever. How cool is that, using like a Swiss Army knife as the Ace of Swords, the ultimate knife. That is like the living embodiment of anxiety to me. I feel like I know these two guys. And my absolute favorite card, King of Cups. Thank you so much for hearing me ramble a little bit about the Next World Tarot and for taking a look at what the full-size deck looks like next to a trimmed one. Maybe when I get my copy of the pocket edition, I'll do another flip through of either that against this or that or whatever. All right, have a wonderful day. Bye.